Hello and welcome to the preview show / emergency special podcast. Joining me tonight is the brilliant Harry from Bath and Ipswich Town aficionado David Dymond. I'm your host Rich Woodward, and guys, we're back again. Our agenda for the preview show, Harry, slightly changed. Dave, great to see you, but probably we'd maybe hoping we weren't having this chat so quickly.
Guys, I'm honoured to be able to crash. I consider this crashing your preview show, so I'm honoured. Believe me, I'm honoured. And I'll tell you what I like about tonight, because obviously the only other pod I do is I do the flagship more than often, and then I do the history show with Stat, as you know. And it's quite nice to do a pod like this without having the spectre of two little ducks hanging over me. And also with the great Harry there after his performance against Borough, honestly.
Death or glory.
Oh.
I was going to ask you to compare Mick's last team and Hurst's first team, but never mind, we won't do that.
Oh, mate, look, I said to you earlier, just before we came on air, that it doesn't seem 5 minutes ago that I was sitting here, with Ben doing the one end of March it was when McCarthy left. Little did I think so soon. Well, who could think that, for goodness sake?
Yeah. Well, let's. We've got, unsurprisingly, thousands of questions on Twitter. So I'm going to make an upfront apology early doors that if we don't read your question out, it's purely because I couldn't find it and maybe I've accidentally skipped through it. But thank you for all of those. We'll take a step back 24 hours, almost 24 hours. Harry and I met up with a few of the other Ipswich Town Twitterati to watch Leeds last night, and I guess there was a bit of a mixed bag of reaction to that.
I've written down here, the mood before the game of the pub was like a dentist's waiting room.
It was
I've never been so apprehensive before going into a game. I just thought, God, were we going to get pumped or were we going to get battered? It was going to be one or the other. And I just had that awful Jewel-esque knot in my stomach heading up to the game.
Jewel-esque.
Yeah, which proved to be the case, right?
Yeah, it did.
I mean, we've had a quick debate before we started the pod. I thought we weren't as bad as QPR, though I suspect the QPR bar was so low. But I guess the big kind of the headlines from last night was Bart back in goal, Knudsen back at left back, Spence at right back rather than Donasian. Eden comes in. I mean, there's Joe's favourite thing to tweet was the team's been named by lottery machine Guinevere and Centre Balls number 3, but there was a bit of that last night.
We had this conversation again before we came on air. I thought we were absolutely pig awful last night. However, I do sort of can appreciate that maybe we did look slightly more, if we could, balanced, because yes, we had a right back playing at right back. Yes, we had a left back playing at left back, and yes, we had Pennington at centre half instead of Enciala, who, let's face it, did have a bit of a mare against QPR. But we were awful. We were really poor, and I'm not convinced Leeds really got out of second gear, really. Yeah. I mean, Harry, did you both? I know you were at Swansea, Harry. I mean, what was the difference? What was the difference between? Here we go. Between Swansea and Leeds, which is Swansea so much more open. Was that it, really?
Yeah, I think Swansea
almost gung ho.
Yeah, Swansea underestimated us. I think they really did. We said, Rich and I talked about this. I don't think Potter had watched, the Swansea manager had watched the second half of the Borough game and seen that we'd actually come up with something that might unlock a defence. But I would say the Leeds game, possibly because there were a lot more experienced players in it, at least it had a shape, it had a personality. But the lack of quality in comparison to Bielsa. We'll put it this way. This time last year, we were exactly on a par. We'll come on to this when we get on to Hurst. We were on exactly the same points as Leeds 12 months ago. Now, it's unfair to compare Hurst and Bielsa. Bielsa, virtually all bar one of those players, Harrison was the only newcomer. 10 of those players were at Leeds 12 months ago.
Wow.
And Peacock Farrell, the keeper, was the only other rookie in the team. That's how you evolve a team. You take what you've got, you take it forward incrementally, you bring in a couple of players at a time. This is what Millwall have done on Saturday. You do that. You don't. But Hurst was reduced to just finding what experienced players he had, just to get them all into the team, to give it some sort of a shape.
Yeah, Harry, you're spot
maybe
on.
I'm wrong.
it wasn't Hurst's fault that we lost Waghorn, that we lost Garner, that we lost McGoldrick. They all wanted to go. It wasn't Hurst's fault. You're spot on there. And I think take those players, and Selina to a degree. All right, he wasn't our player, but take those players. I'm sorry, out of any team in the Championship, and you're going to see a massive difference. And we've all said it's just a massive, gaping great hole, isn't it? A 40-goal hole.
Yeah.
And as soon as the first goal went in last night, I think there was all a collective sense of game over, quite prescient. The texts on the Blue Monday WhatsApp group and Twitter, the noise started to gather pace that stuff was going to happen outside.
Recall this. I mean, at least on Saturday, to a degree, we were okay. QPR perhaps let us do it. Perhaps wasn't pressing quite so high, 2-0 up. But we were passing the ball around at the back, and we were keeping a bit of possession. Last night, we couldn't even keep the ball at the back. I didn't count one passage of play. I don't think of more than 3 or 4 pass completion, 3 or 4 passes at most.
We had there was a couple where it was slightly more than 3 days, but yeah, you're right. There wasn't much.
I'll tell you what, not many. It was tough. It was a tough watch last night. Maybe because it was a tough one.
I've written down here at 60 minutes. I make notes during the game. We're being pressed back deeper and deeper. We were being pressed on the edge of our own penalty area. That was what they were doing. They weren't doing it consistently, but every so often they just suddenly turn up the gas. I wrote down a phrase here that it was like a dark tango, is how I can only describe it, in the second half, where they would start to ramp up the pressure. It was almost like they were just whipping themselves up into a frenzy, gathering tempo, and then suddenly you found yourself having something like 6 corners in the space of 4 minutes. We were just absolutely being pummeled. And the second goal, I mean, unmarked centre back, but given what they were going through, it was a net. If it hadn't been then, it would have come some other way.
It would have. Yeah.
I mean, in the short corner, to just completely switch off for the short corner.
Well, guys, we're going to go through this in a bit more detail.
I don't know about you guys. There's a couple of positives if you could take anything from last night. One, Bart, who I think we all agree.
Yeah.
Bit of a shaky start-ish. I think they were sort of dissing him a bit on the guy who commentates on Sky on the Red Button's a complete idiot, but he got a bit of stick from him. But I thought Bart was sort of second half, he was up to it, wasn't he? Bart was back.
Yeah.
And I like to see Pennington at centre back. I didn't think Pennington had a bad game at centre back. He's a good player, isn't he? Another Everton player like Connolly last year, good steady pro. He's going to make a living out of the game. He's a good, play a good standard. Whether it be Premier, I don't know, but be a good Championship player, be a nice player to sign.
Yeah.
Not unlikely, but
these mistakes, these trends that we saw last night, we've been seeing them for the last few weeks, if not, since August. So it seems as good a time as any, guys, to maybe let's analyse what went wrong for Mr. Hurst. I've kind of got a bit of a timeline. It's important to start at the beginning and maybe talk about the previous manager, who is now the previous manager, and maybe start to put a jigsaw together of all the bits and pieces that have gone wrong, because the timing at the start, Dave, wasn't particularly good. Mick's kind of departure dragged on a little bit, and Hurst didn't come in until halfway through.
There was speculation.
June.
To be fair to Hurst, and to be fair to Evans, obviously Hurst was the one. Now we all understand. I assume he wanted from the start. I assume once the interview process took place, and Shrewsbury was still caught up in the playoffs. So from that point of view, you've got to respect. You've got to respect that he was. And that takes us to the end of May. Yeah. So I think then did he not go on holiday? So
2 weeks for holiday.
So 145 days he was in charge. So was that middle of June, something like that? And just on the World Cup, wasn't it? I think. Yeah. I think we did. I think you guys perhaps did a World Cup pod, and it was announced then. Yeah, and I like everybody else. I saw you two guys are the same. Yes, young, up and coming, hungry manager. Yep, all for that.
Yep. And the kind of gamble that we've been asking for as well. Yeah. Sorry. And the kind of gamble that we were hoping that Evans might go for, without the kind of hindsight of what was to come. Harry, any kind of thoughts or observations on the kind of don't want to call it the Mick hangover, but I'm going to call it the Mick hangover, and the kind of obstacles that Hurst had with such a big presence like Mick McCarthy leaving the club, and potentially how it's run with Evans kind of leaving the manager to get on with things. Maybe some of the thoughts that previous clubs have had when Mick's left.
It's the pattern. This has come up where Mick has left, they say every time he leaves, it's the most obvious example was at Wolves when Solbakken came in. Now Solbakken was the most un-Mick manager ever. He was kind of circle time and consensus building, whereas Mick was old school. This is how you're doing it. This is how you're doing it. Kind of, it was a very different model. Now I don't know whether you could draw a parallel, but there was a concern that that Mick was so set in his ways of doing things that a manager would have to very quickly unpick that. But that said, there were so many players who left. The squad was so fundamentally reshaped that I don't think that was such an issue in hindsight. Maybe I'm wrong, Dave. Or Richard might disagree.
I think you're right to an extent there, Harry.
Yeah.
What I get, my take on it is he never and I've said this before on the pod. What you had with Mick is a very big them and us, and he built that. In the end, that was probably his undoing. To be fair, look at the Norwich, what happened at Norwich, and things like that. And I never got that impression. Everyone from day one, with hindsight now looking back, you never really got. Well, look at the Exeter game. That was game 2, wasn't it? Second game of the season. You never really got that impression that everything was well. And you hear little bits about Doig and his number 2. You never really got that impression that it was a happy. It was a happy camp, let alone before they even got out on the park.
I think as well, the scope of responsibility. Evans gives his manager total control over the whole football brief, and I think I've written down. To me, Hurst is a brilliant lower league manager. That's his hinterland. That's his world. That's what he knows. Good. So suddenly, the step up, given that scope of responsibility, layer in on top of that then a group of experienced, proven players with track records who need managing in a different way to lower league players who are a little bit less perfect and who haven't achieved so much. I think. I'm not blaming Hurst for underestimating the scale of the job, but to me there was a mismatch between what Hurst was being asked to do in hindsight and what he was capable of doing. He ticked lots of boxes, but and Hurst betrayed himself. I know it came up in a couple of interviews where he said there wasn't a big difference between League One and Championship. I am sorry.
Gulf.
That's
gulf.
Absolutely.
Don't you think, that's a good point, Harry, don't you think that, I know it's never been the Ipswich way and a very un-Ipswich way, but don't you think that would have been the time then to bring a director of football?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it wouldn't have done any harm in hindsight.
Who I don't know. People said Burley and people. Maybe someone like that. Maybe someone like Burley, who understands the club. All right, he's been at a football a while, but you hear him speak and he's still very much in touch with the club. And I heard him speak a little. I heard something from him a little while ago. I think it was on Mark Murphy's show, Life's a Pitch, where Mark said, "Oh, would you?" When Mick was all the speculation, would you take the job? No. No, I wouldn't go back to full-time management. However, and he said this, I would accept a role,
There is a parallel with Jewell here, Dave, actually. Jewell was at his best to me when he had Dave Whelan at Wigan. Now, Whelan wasn't a director of football, but Whelan was a football man upstairs.
Absolutely.
And he was able to. So when Jewell had a problem, I always feel that he had Whelan there to give him that measure of protection. And I think whatever else about Evans, he's got a track record with his football judgment. No, he doesn't. He's not a football man. No.
And I hate to say it, and Norrie's the CEO.
Yep.
They're not.
Yeah.
Let's talk quickly, guys, about the transfer business then, because there's some big names that have gone out. A lot of Championship games that go out the door with these players as well. We're talking Waghorn, Webster, Garner, annoyingly right at the end of the transfer window as well. McGoldrick on a free transfer. Even Hyam going out. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but he's played at this level. Gleeson, short-term deal. Carroll, short-term deal. I'm sure I'm missing some other people as well. We've got Loneys leaving as well.
Connolly. Carter Vickers, don't forget.
Carter Vickers, who did really well as well. That's a lot of players leaving. And the replacements on the whole pluck from lower divisions: Jackson, Harrison, Edwards, Roberts, a few low knees. We've got Danasi and obviously NCL Nolan coming, known to him from Shrewsbury. But again, and Jono talks about this in that great podcast, by the way.
Fantastic.
The shame we've got at the moment, there's so much ITFC news going on at the moment that Jono podcast might kind of fall through the cracks. Do look it up, guys. It's really good. But a lot of players coming in, Dave.
In some ways, Hurst has been a little bit unlucky. I mean, whether it was his choice or the owner's choice. Walters has since come out and said the owner called him. He's been. Walters would have fit. Okay, he's 34, 35. A fit Walters would have added something to the team. He'd have added that experience. He would have led the line. that was a bit unfortunate. You know, what, 2.5 games did he play? Not even that, I don't think. And he does his Achilles and he's gone. You know, that's unfortunate. And ironically, out of all those players, probably the one I would assume we might have kept, although from what I understand he wanted to go back up north, was probably Joe Garner. Again, he was a bit Marmite, but my God, he led the line pretty well. He'd have been ideal for us now. Yeah. Absolutely ideal for us. You know, especially to work up front alongside someone like a Jackson. I'm not saying Sears his experience, but like a Jackson, like a Harrison, he would have been, he'd have been ideal. So yeah, that was a bit of a, as Harry said, and that was really late in the day, wasn't it? Just before the window, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll come back to talk about that in context of Norwich as well. Go on, Harry.
Just I always bang on about this. It always comes back to balance, and if you know you're losing a whole heap of experienced players, or that they're minded to leave from an early stage, you would sit down with, I don't know, it's obviously going to be Evans and Hurst. Surely sit down and say, okay, if we're losing these, we need to bring in a spine of experience, because the lack of balance was, that's what you always look for when you're looking at a team or a squad. It was just screaming out that, to bring in 7 or whatever lower league players who would be going straight into the first team or would be in the 18-man squad was just simply going to tip the thing over. So why they couldn't have done that back in July? I know it's hindsight, but that, if you're losing that number, you've got to rebalance it.
And our experienced players like Skews, who, again he's a bit of Marmite, love him or love. He's been a great player. I think he's been a great player for us, an experienced pro. But what's he now? 32. Playing in centre mid, is he something like that, Harry? 31, must be 31.
He must be, yeah.
He's not getting any younger, Chambers the same. It's a difficult one, difficult one.
So we go through pre-season playing better football by all accounts, but not scoring goals. I think we scored 2 against Braintree, and then I don't think scored 2 again.
I went to the West Ham game. I didn't see.
Let's talk about West Ham.
Fantastic.
And the midfield.
Okay, it's a friendly. So it was the midfield. It was. I think I believe you correct me, but I believe we started Dazelle, Downs,
Nydam.
Dazelle, Downs, and Nydam in centre mid, and Wolford was playing at the back as well.
Yeah, centre back. Yeah.
And they were superb. They were really superb. All right. It was a friendly. I think second half West Ham brought Noble on. I don't think he started, and it's a little bit of difference. West Ham had more and more of the ball, but it was tremendous goal. You could see. Oh, I like that. I'm liking this. Dazelle receives a ball, plays a blind pass, Harrison finishes, and you think, wow, yeah, I'm liking this. And you came away from that game thinking, oh yeah, okay, here we go. Next up, Blackburn. 5 minutes into the Blackburn game, Edward scores. What a goal! What a goal! Yeah. That's a high, wasn't it? And you think, oh, here we go.
But the lack of goal threat had been a theme in pre-season, and we'll talk about systems. Maybe we'll talk about systems as well, kind of now, Harry, and a slight change of approach with number 10 just withdrawn behind the striker and a one up front with wingers. This never really clicked in, didn't it? And then we got to Norwich, and it kind of all got chucked in the air, but it never really got time to establish itself.
There were flashes, and the thing which heartened me about Hurst coming in was the 2 themes, width and industry. They were the 2 things that he would give you. He was unlike Mick, who the wingers were probably the most neglected in his way of playing, where Hurst championed wingers. He wanted width, he wanted to stretch defences, and he wanted to play on the front foot pressing. And I saw it. I remember sending Ben a tweet, or a text, I should say, a text message in the middle, early in the first half, I should say, the Exeter game, and I said, this is wonderful. For that first 20 minutes, you could see how it worked. We were working them over. They were literally, we were camped around their penalty box. Hate to say it, much as Leeds were camped around ours in the second half last night. That was the. You could see the model, and you could see there is a definite germ of a philosophy and an idea of playing, but it was sporadic, and that's where the cracks came in. We know the Championship is such a streetwise league. Teams worked out that they couldn't sustain it, and then if they were patient, they waited for their moment would come, and
we started to see these 20-minute patches of good play that weren't followed up with goals. So Dave's already mentioned 2-2 draw. Fairly fortunate 2-2 draw in the end, given we scored right at the death, but probably overall just about fair. The Rotherham game to me might be one of these kind of sliding doors moments that we talk about. I went to that game and we dominated from start to finish. Yeah. This is the first game where Nolan comes in, by the way, having signed a little bit later than everyone else.
And he was
NCR
excellent
as well.
wasn't
He was good. Yeah, definitely. You could tell that he was a good player, two-footed, quite happy to have the ball, quite happy to turn and start attacking forwards as well. That was the best performance I saw him give for us. He scored a good goal at Birmingham, but that was his best performance. But the kind of typical sucker punch right at the end, this kind of fortuitous goal, the ball drops and it's pad into the net, and you kind of the alarm bells, they're not ringing, but you kind of think these are the kind of games where you don't want to lose and actually you want to be winning.
Well, especially if you've dominated like we did. I wasn't there. I was listening to it, and Alex Matthew, I think, who's he's usually pretty fair, said I was only a matter of time. In the first half, this is really good, and he was his first game summarising after McCarthy era. He was all over it, saying, "Oh, this is fantastic." And even at the end, he said, "Oh no, it's one of those things. Went against us today, but we play like that. We're going to win more than we lose." But,
I'm not going to drill into every single game.
No,
we
you
could,
can't. I mean,
because there's not too many of them.
Well, I think you said earlier the Norwich game was an odd one. So come to the Norwich game, which was on the back of the Sheffield Wednesday. Dave,
do you mind if we pause on Norwich quickly? I just wanted to ask Harry about Exeter, if that's all right. And this, Exeter, you mentioned it there, but the post-match. This is to both of you. The post-match comments.
Yeah.
I just want to dwell on that a little bit. Harry, do you want to talk to that one? You were there.
In simple terms, I watched the game. My take from the game was that it was very early days. I felt that the new players who'd come in actually got Hurst's model of playing. Given that they were playing against League Two opposition, it was probably easier for them to kind of work with it. They didn't have the problem of Championship opponents. Whereas I felt the old Ipswich player, the old McCarthy players were. They were struggling with the model of play and they were launching it up the field. And you could see the pendulum of the game swinging. We started so brilliantly. But as we started to run out of ideas, our players reverted to type and were just getting rid of the ball. Exeter were starting to dominate possession. And in hindsight now, you begin to wonder to what depth had this new way of thinking being coached. It's a dangerous thing when you have a manager from one philosophy moving to a manager with a completely different one. Wigan famously got relegated by having 4 of them in a row, where they went from Martinez right the way through to, I think it was Malky Mackay at the end, but they had Rossler and whoever else was in between. They basically, each manager had a different way of playing and they all brought in their own players. To migrate from one philosophy to another, I felt a lot of the older players from the previous manager hadn't quite got that way of playing. And the post-match comments then, I didn't know what to make of them. In hindsight now, I just don't think he had the track record to say what he had said. If he'd had a length of wins under his belt at the club, I think he might have got away with it. But I think in the end, it was one of several times when, in hindsight, you look back at the fitness interview as well, when you think maybe he actually ended up undermining himself.
Yeah, and the Chambers' reaction, Dave, to those comments wasn't particularly
significant, wasn't it?
It was,
and he was right. As I said before, the previous manager just did not dig out players, did he? He didn't. He was very protective of his players, and I think his players respected him for it. And this is the difference, I think. So early on, Harry's spot on. So early on, you just haven't built up. You haven't gained that respect from the players to come out with something like that so early on.
Yeah. We'll hop, skip and jump through the fixtures. I sort of call out Villa, which was actually a fairly decent performance.
Yeah.
And Sheffield Wednesday away seemed like a decent performance. Both of them marred by red cards, though, that either held us back or, in the case of Sheffield Wednesday, potentially lost us the game. Any thoughts on these kind of silly red cards? It's inexperienced players that picked up on them, but they're a factor, weren't they? Yeah,
of course they were. I mean, NCR, was that ever a straight red? I mean, you can talk about that for ages. It was a really soft one. Eden, well, it was a bit silly. 2 yellow, second yellow, wasn't it, in a short space of time?
Yeah.
I seem to remember. NCR's was just one of those. It just could have gone either way, but typical Ipswich. It went against us, and we go on to lose the game. What I would say is we haven't. I know you make your own luck, but most of the mistakes we've made, we have just been punished, haven't we? Every single time. Which in previous seasons, Bart has made bloody miraculous saves, as we all know. Things of perhaps he didn't have let's say Hurst perhaps in some of the games didn't quite get the run of the ball.
Yep.
I think to some degree you make your own luck. It's interesting. Marlon Romeo, who we'll come on talk about with Millwall, a bit of a rookie still at right back. Very good, very not peppery. You don't get that. You don't get that. No. He's not there. He's not. He's very up and down. But he has a rick in him. He's a very good attacking option. He's an outlet. But he's given away 2 penalties in recent games. So you increase the odds against you when it's a risk you have when you have to bring new players through. It's inevitable, and they will make mistakes. When the weight of that number starts to tip up, then you're just increasing the likelihood of that happening, feeding back into the streetwise championship narrative again, where teams can wait for one of these mistakes. And the crashing example finally being that pleading look on Inciala's face when the penalty was conceded at QPR last week. I saw there was a photograph of him, and I wanted to give the guy a hug. I really did, because there was a guy who should have been brought in as an occasional bench option, blooded into the team occasionally. I mean, they have Murray Wallace is a Millwall player they're doing that with. Bring him in, give him some time, take him back out again, learn from it, evolve him. But chucking him in like that, but times that by all of those new players. And it's not just that they make mistakes and give away things without the ball. When you're building a 5-pass move on the attack in this style of play, inevitably, if there's one pass that's a decimal place out, the move breaks down again.
It breaks down.
So
And don't forget the player we've just saw in the summer, Webster. So he came from Portsmouth, so he made the step up. But I tell you, Webster had a mistake in him. My God, Webster had a mistake in him. However, he could perhaps get past that because Webster was a nice footballer. Webster could play. Webster, could bring the ball out of defence. He could ping 30, 40-yard balls with his left foot, right foot as well. So that was perhaps, and obviously we sold him for whatever we sold him for. But don't forget, Webster, he was good, but Christ, he had a mistake in him. He didn't, and it is Harry's dead right. He's getting up to speed, getting up to speed from League One or League Two, Webster League One / League Two to the Championship. Big step.
Yeah. I'll drag you back to Norwich, Dave. Sorry for cutting you off before.
Oh, no,
there was all kinds of stuff happening at Norwich. So at that point, no win, and I think people were getting a little bit tetchy about that and a little bit nervous. And it's obviously not the greatest record of lay against Norwich. Walters comes in on loan a few days beforehand, as does Pennington, and I think that kind of given everyone a bit of a lift. But the Sunday morning, we're all at the Greyhound, or we're all watching on TV on the red button, and Bart is out of the team, and the 4-2-3-1/4-1-4-1 is gone. So, is this the point where Hurst starts to panic, guys?
Yes and no, really, because it kind of worked. We probably. If we'd have hung on and won, or if we'd have nicked one at the end against Norwich, I think Walters had a decent chance at the end. I don't think no one would begrudge us. I mean, that was a fairly even game. I thought we played quite well against Norwich. Sorry, I've forgot what was the question again?
Well, it was whether he starts to panic at this point. The tactics, the kind of moving away from what he's tried to do so far.
I don't know. I think he was always going to play. So we got Walters in. That midweek after the Sheffield Wednesday game. So he's always going to fit Walters. Get Walters in the team somehow.
Any thought whether that was the right thing to do? He's obviously a big name, but straight in the starting lineup, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether he thought that would give everybody a lift after being flat for the Sheffield Wednesday game. I don't know. Shouldn't need a lift in the local derby against Norwich with 26,000 or whatever it was in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but certainly from that game on, I think that's when the trouble really that's when it really was noticeable. I think.
Yeah. Brentford, I'll never forget. I got late to the ground. I pitched up at around 7:10, a long drive over. Wanted to go say goodbye to the bees, as it were, and just to be there for the applause and thank him for all he did. And walking up to the ground, having the team, I hadn't heard the team. I just jumped out of the car, legged it up, listening to the conversations and the looks of bewilderment on all the faces of the Town fans all standing around outside Planet Blue, outside the North Stand, trying to make sense of what they said. Is it wing backs? Is it wing backs? Has he gone to a back three?
Yeah.
People were just baffled, and I don't think it was just the fans who were baffled. I wonder if the players were looking at that as well. I mean, some of the comments was one dad with his 9-year-old or his 10-year-old son. He said, and that Keane and Jules' names were both mentioned in the course. So, he's picking players at random. That, to me, it was an incremental thing. It started with Norwich, and then it got worse. He started to, and I mean, Brentford should have. I don't know if you were at that game, Dave. Brentford should have buried.
No, absolutely should have buried us.
Buried us in that first half.
Absolutely. But then again, second half he changed it slightly, and I think we said earlier, what do you think? Okay, let's take this. Let's take this on. And the game was it Birmingham after Brentford? I've lost track.
I was Bolton.
Yeah.
So we've on a bit of a run of draws. We've missed out Hull. The defeat straight after Norwich was Hull, which was
that was
totally 2 weeks of international break training and preparation that goes out the door within
Bolton
seconds.
Game.
But Brentford, a game of 2 halves. Generally another confidence booster by the end of the game, but straight into Bolton with a really crappy 0-0, wasn't it? Really terrible.
That was the game. There you go. So we all said we picked it up second half against Brentford. He made the changes, picked it up, and you think, come on,
here we go.
Let's take it into the Bolton game, and it was just so flat again. Probably in hindsight, the sending off worked against us a bit. I mean, whether Bolton came for a point anyway, the sending off worked against us really. They just stuck men behind the ball and Big McGuinness up front, I think, didn't they? So we just couldn't play. We just didn't play around them at all. Play through them, play around them. They're really tight. So that may have gone against us, but that wasn't great. And then of course we go to Birmingham, so we get 3 and 2-0 up. Again, in the end, we
surprisingly
did well
2-0 up, by the way.
Yes, and in the end, we did quite well to hang on to 2-2, didn't we?
Yes. So it's 2 goals conceded a game there, and after a pretty fortunate in the end 2-2 draw at Birmingham, Borough on the TV, just another really poor home performance, wasn't it, gents?
Yeah, I felt Borough was a bit like Leeds last night. I think if they upped their game, certainly second half, that could have been 4-5, could have been anything that game. I think. Yeah. And I think you guys said, I know we said Ben both said that typical Pulis just did not want to concede. 2-0 up, wasn't going to overexert themselves, didn't want to concede, saw the job out. That I felt a bit like last night. I think Brenner Woolley said on the commentary on Suffolk it was men against boys. It certainly was that night.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, in terms of home performances, Bolton, Borough, and then QPR after Swansea. We will come back to Swansea because you were there, Harry, and this is the kind of one shining light, really, of the one win. But the home fans who have seen 2 wins in the calendar year, this is, you're not surprised that the mood starts to turn, and then we go into Swansea with a win, Harry, and I came to call this a statistical anomaly because, frankly, if we hadn't got the set piece and Swansea hadn't missed a shed load of chances, this could have been a very different story as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, luck evens out, definitely. And you could say, whereas we were unlucky in Rotherham and a couple of the other games, we bloody hell did we ride our luck in this one. We really did. As I was saying earlier, Potter, I think, he underestimated us. He played too open and he gave us space to attack, and we managed to land a couple of killer blows against them. And then they went double or quits. They throw on an extra winger, which got them the goal where he fed in Selena, and then the loss of the centre back then gave us the winner at the end. But it was a statistical anomaly when you look at the pattern of the game. We just, we caught them with a good counterpunch. Basically, it did remind me of the Millwall away game last year. It really did, in that it was, by the end of it, it was 2 teams going for it, and or the Watford game, Jokanovic. I think. I think Potter is similar to Jokanovic. If it's tied at the end, he will go double or quits and just say, "Well, let's give it a lash and see if we can actually win it," which happened with the famous Chaplow goal. But but it wasn't a tactical masterclass. There was an element of obstinate defending. We held it together, and to be fair, the spine of Chambers, Skuse, and Sears, that did help in that situation without question.
Yeah, that was when Sears and Edwards combined really well, didn't they, on a couple of occasions? And you think, okay, let's carry this on to let's carry this on to QPR, and it just didn't really. I mean, that was Ben likes to call it an outlier, doesn't he? An outlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, sure. Had we lost at Swansea, do you think had we lost at Swansea and had we lost convincingly at Swansea, which we could well have done, do you think he would have pulled the trigger before the international break?
I've no doubts. I think he would have gone if Swansea bought him. He bought him a bit of time,
stay of execution.
But so abject was Queens Park Rangers. I think when that penalty was conceded, I think that's when the axe fell. That's my 6 minutes. I've nothing to go on. It's pure instinct. But I think he bought himself time after Swansea. But so dismal was that first half. And McLaren did a number. He looked at that game as any streetwise championship manager would. He looked at let's cut off the supply lines, and we were suddenly 4 men down.
It must be the form team. I mean, other than, I hate to say it quietly, Norwich and Derby, QPR must be the form team, aren't they? Incredible.
Yeah,
I was reading somewhere tonight. I think their first 4 games did they have I got this right? First 4 games they conceded 10. I think I've got that right, or maybe even more. 7 of those. Well, the last 10 games they've conceded 6. Right. I mean, they're he's, to be fair to McLaren, he's got them. He's really got them together and got them playing.
But it was the manner of our performance and the fact another international break, 2 weeks to kind of. We talked about this on the last week's preview show about whether the 2 weeks you'd actually want 1 week and go into another game and kind of try to build from there. Whether like Hull after Norwich, it's just
to further compound it. It was the cheap ticket offer, the £10 ticket with your season ticket, 18,000 in, nice sunny day. Come on, let's carry on. And it was just such a damp squib, wasn't it? And and people are right. Those players. I know one or two. My mates took their kids and stuff like that, and they said, to be honest, Dave, they were bored second half.
Yeah, people absolutely leaving at half time. I heard. Yeah.
They're not going to get those. They're going to get. Well, let's just hope. Spoiler alert for the new manager bounce, because we bloody well need it.
We do. Yeah. Another 2 goals conceded, and we're all the way up to Leeds last night and another 2 goals, and I think you're right, Harry. I think the decision will be made, and what you don't want to do is with such a big game at Leeds last night, it could have been a 6 or a 7, frankly, couldn't it, given the mess we could have been in if Hurst had been dispensed of after.
Don't forget, I mean, we suffered results like that. I mean, when McCarthy was first there, was it Blackpool? Was it 6-0 at Blackpool? There was a thumping at Leicester, Palace as well. Palace as well.
Yeah, penalties.
Thumpings. But there you go.
You could see one of the things we're going to say. You could see in the Leeds game, everybody wanted it over after 80 minutes. It was Rob who was standing beside me. We were chatting. He said, "I want this." It was 82 minutes on the clock. They were just working us over. We were on the ropes, and they wanted it over. And the thing that upset me most was, I wrote down in my notes that this feels completely horrible. It really did, and I really actually felt for all the fans there, because we're just a group of friends. We love our team. We meet up. You want the best for your team, and to have good memories to take away from it, and just have something positive. And that's the thing I came away with. I really felt sorry, and I felt sad. I really felt sad for all the supporters as much as anything else, because we don't want much. We don't have a sense of entitlement, but you just came away and thinking, for God's sake, give us
pleasure now and again. Come on.
Something. I did feel. I just felt. We should have had a group hug at the end. To be quite honest.
And to make it worse, stupid Leeds who sing that stupid Champions of Europe song.
But we were singing we're bottom of. They were singing we're top of the league. We were singing we're bottom of the league. It got a bit silly and a bit gallows humour kind of at the end. But
was there any? Listen, you were there. Were you with your way? Were you in your way? You weren't. You did Ben Bloom, and you're in the away fans.
We went in the prawn sandwiches.
No. Was there? Well, I don't think Ben does. He just has posh seats, doesn't he? But was there any no sort of animosity amongst the fans, as I heard there was on Saturday in the?
I was stood right next to that actually. Kicking off on Q. Well, it was face off against QPR. 2 people.
Oh yeah,
someone chanting "We're crap" and someone saying, "Well, that's not helpful, is it?" Not in these words, obviously, and then facing off. There was none of that last night. I think just generally people were a bit annoyed. There was a bit of chanting "sacked" in the morning, which. Sacked in the afternoon, so not a million miles away. But I think it was everyone kind of expecting the inevitable.
Never quite got as far as Paul Hurst, your footballer's shit.
No, indeed. Well, we didn't see any of it, did we?
We just didn't get that far into the piece, did we?
Yeah. So here we are with 5 months into his reign, the shortest serving Ipswich Town manager in our history, permanent manager, with one win to show for it. A squad that is arguably a little bit imbalanced, but certainly inexperienced, without maybe a structure or a strategy or an approach to play football. I guess two thoughts. One is, it's sad for Paul Hurst, isn't it? You know, this is a guy trying to do his best, who kind of got his big shot at kind of managing the Championship, and he might come back. But it's sad on that front. But on the other side, is League One, you know, it's a real possibility, isn't it? And what does the new guy have to do? There's quite a lot of stuff chucked in there,
I think going back to Paul Hurst, I heard Ben say something on Radio Suffolk earlier on. You know, no one wants to see a guy like that out of work. Although, don't kid ourselves. I don't know, what was he on what was he? Was he 3-year contract, Harry? 2 or 3?
I think was it 4, maybe?
Was it?
I don't know.
No, he'll be okay. I mean, I've heard some talk that he may even go back to Shrewsbury. So I think I heard that.
There's a mixed response to that on Twitter when their local paper asked that. But...
Right, okay.
On one of the Shrewsbury message boards, there is an on-running Ipswich thread, which is up to about 20-odd pages, which for them is a lot. It's not the busiest forum. You'd get a mixed reception, is all I will say. Leave it at that. Yeah.
But sad when...
so you don't want to see that. And, you know, in his interviews, as I think Brenner said on radio, so he comes across as open, perhaps sometimes too open. Yeah. And you know, and too honest, you know, and again, the sad thing, again, they said on Radio Suffolk, again, Brenner, you know, the Ipswich, the match day commentator, said that he's seen a change in him physically. He said, you know, at the start of, you know, for the friendlies in the first game, all right, he's come back from holiday and he's tanned and stuff like that. Lovely summer we had, and he said, you know, he just looks beaten up. He saw him on the touchline last night at Leeds, and he just said he just looked quite a broken man. He just said he looks beaten up, tired.
Yeah,
you know.
I think Mrs. Nuts mentioned the bags under the eyes. We saw Mrs. Nuts last night, by the way. So hello to her. But, he mentioned the bags under the eyes and all that stuff. He did look a different guy, didn't he, to the guy from July.
It's kind of sad, but you know, as we sort of touched on earlier, I think he was just out of his depth.
Yeah.
And you don't know until you make the jump, do you?
Harry, any thoughts on where this leaves Ipswich Town? I mean, I don't want to go too much into this because we've got a shed load of questions and we will come to those. But, you know, we've kind of, even under Evans, have been generally quite patient and given managers time. This is the first time where, as a club, we've kind of been made quite a rapid decision. My take on it, look, I don't kid ourselves. When McCarthy came in, we were like, what were we, 5 points adrift, very similar. Think 1st of November, I think he came in, very similar. But by God, we had a far better squad. I'm sure we had a far better squad. We had DJ Campbell, who was just going on the end of that, you know, that mad scoring one. He seemed to score in every game for about 7 or 8 consecutive games, didn't he? In one of his games, he was winning. I mean, one game, this is typical one game, he punched the ball in the end for a win, I think against Burnley, I seem to remember, at Portman Road. So don't kid ourselves, we had a far better squad then. We had McCarthy coming in had far more to work with, I think. He also had a loan window as well. Which we're basically, unless there are some free agents or Lambert can magic some players out of nowhere, we've got to work with what we've got right the way up until Christmas. On that point,
it's a huge. I would go as far as to say any manager that comes in now with the squad we've got and the state of the club, but you know, as the club is now, and keeps us up, 21st, whatever that is, deserves manager of the year, in my opinion. Now we are that bad. We are that low. Seriously, lowest of. I think, you know, and I've seen even back in the good old John Duncan days. You know, the football was pretty grim and stuff like that, but it wasn't as bad as this, and not as bad as this. And thoughts on that question, Harry, about where this leaves us as a club, and whether this is unfortunately the new world that we have to live in, which is managers' time is sometimes very short, and we can't, you know, give managers 5 years, 6 years to get their philosophy across.
No, I think we still can. I think that hasn't changed. There are a lot of, I mean, you know, the team are playing on Saturday. They've got, you know, they're not a big team. They've been patient. They've given the manager time. He's got a philosophy. You can do that, but you've got. I'll say this. I was banging on about this, and all the listeners will be sick of me saying this. My absolute rule: 3-word sentence. Owners relegate clubs. Owners relegate clubs. We've got Evans has to look at himself on all of this as well. For goodness sake. It's fundamental. It's not. I mean, when I was chatting to Mullet on the way back in the car, we were chatting about it on the way back, and we both agreed that when there's been a change I mean, we've seen the Championship transform in the decade he's been there, and he's always behind the curve. He keeps missing it. He reacts too late, and with every new increment in TV deal in the Premier League, that then it's like a pulse that waves, financial pulse that hammers through the Championship. And Evans has been too slow. So if you don't stand still, you either go forward or backwards. And we have just drifted backwards from being in the upper quartile, upper third of Championship teams in terms of weight to being now in the lower third. And that, if you look, it's 2 out of every 3, if you analyse it, go back and look over Championship tables over the last 10 years, one of the 3 teams goes down because they're too small. It'll be Burton, it could be Yeovil, it could be Milton Keynes, whoever. Yeah. The other 2 who go down, when we went up to Forest a couple of years ago for that end-of-season game, there were 3 teams in the mix. There was Blackburn, there was Birmingham, and there was Forest. One of the 3 was going to drop that day. And if you look at the way each of those teams, they were run from the top, you could see why they were in that situation. Yeah, and that's, as I say, so it's not just having a rant at Evans, but he's got to look at that contextual evidence has to be put in place. And whoever comes in, you've got to either respect the fact that that's the financial topography, or you sell the club. It's binary.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so let's say what's he had? Is he appointed 5 managers in his tenure? He's got 3 wrong. He's got 3 very wrong. Certainly, McCarthy, he got right. Obviously, at the time, he got right. All right, that run its course at the end. But certainly, Jewell, Keane, obviously Paul Hurst, very, very wrong. I mean, ironically, why did we get rid of Magilton?
Yeah,
anyway, that's for a whole other podcast. That's for a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
And do you know what? And for you, Harry, you're spot on. With Millwall, what you have got is you've got Harris, who's got the connection with the club. Yeah. He's got the big connection with the club. So immediately you've got all the fans behind him. I think he's still their record goal scorer, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he is.
168 goals, absolutely. Yeah.
There you go. Legend. But exactly. Yeah. So they're behind him, whatever. So they can struggle at the bottom, but they'll still be behind the manager because he's one of them.
Yeah.
Should we do 5-10 minutes on Millwall and then just blitz the questions, guys? Because we need to chat about what Brian Klug's got to do on Saturday. I think he'll be
Harry.
But let's just understand the opposition and whether we've got any chance of maybe getting ourselves at least a win.
Go on,
or
Harry.
Maybe a point.
Okay.
Shoot.
Full details.
Is this what you do, Rich? You just let him go now.
I'm just here for the ride.
Okay, I'm going to hammer through this to give everybody a good. This is a good basic overview. The TWTD notes will go up tomorrow at lunchtime, so you'll have all the kind of. Well, there's only one formation actually. There's only one starting lineup because he's kept the same starting 11 for the last 3 games.
Mike Bassett's formation.
Screaming. There's just so many screaming parallels in terms of what we should be doing when you look at this. They lost. Okay, in simple terms, they are getting back to that high intensity physical and athletic 4-4-2 that they had 12 months ago or last season that served them well, and they grew into last season as the team blended, and they're going to do exactly the same now. This is the model they're going on. They've had 3 games, the last 3 games, wins against Villa and against Wigan, where they came from behind on Tuesday. They lost against Reading, and as Ben said in the flagship show, they absolutely battered them. It was something like 27 shots and 12 on target. And the Reading keeper, I think was their 3rd choice, came in and had the game of his life. It was just one of those mad games. But the key has been there's 2 players that the whole thing has hung on. Sean Hutchinson, the centre-back, and George Saville, the midfielder. Saville is gone, and the key is about replacing him and getting Ryan Leonard and Sean Williams, the 2 central midfielders, to work together. Williams is the more creative one. Whereas Leonard is growing into the role. He's getting more box to box and he's getting more energetic. But that Saville role, that's the key. But the other part of the problem they've had with being unable to keep clean sheets is that Hutchinson's been out for a couple of months. I think it's with a knee injury, if memory serves me right. He came back off the bench. He played a cameo against Wigan on Tuesday. And when he's fit, he goes in. Hutchinson was the player. Remember Felix Magath? There's a great name. He when he was at Fulham, he brought him down from Motherwell. It didn't work out for whatever reason there, and he's ended up over at Millwall, where he's fitted in perfectly. He's the glue that holds the Millwall back 4 together, whereas they've had it was Wallace. Murray Wallace has been in with Jake Cooper. It's that thing again. You look at 4-4-2 as a series of 5 partnerships, 2 in the middle, 2 in the back, 2 up front, and the 2 wide guys. When those partnerships are working well, both players are augmented. And I think Jake Cooper, who's his partner, when Hutchinson comes in, Cooper suddenly gets 20% on his game. But the overall narrative is one of getting back to what they were doing last year, and it looks as if the camera's starting to come into focus for them now, particularly at home, which, as we all know, for Millwall is absolutely vital. Harris loved, as we said, 41 years old. They love his style of play, one of our own, as we know. The other minor point, there is something he has with a predecessor, but our previous manager. There's no way Harris is going to follow supporter opinion. he just tells them what to do with themselves. He's got his own views of how to play.
Yeah, I like
but
him.
he's a really good manager. What else? Ben Amos has replaced Jordan Archer in goal.
I was going to ask about the keeper, because the keeper had a mistake in it, didn't he?
He did have a mistake. He also had a hissy fit by all accounts. Several of them said that when he was dropped. But Ben Amos is a safer pair of hands, but he commands his box very well. Ropey kicking, but that could be because of orders.
Where was he last season? It wasn't a Millwall last season, was he?
Bolton.
Yeah.
He was on loan.
From United.
He's an ex-United player.
Yeah.
So the centre-backs we've mentioned. The full-backs, Romeo, as I say, he's up and down, but has a rick in him. On the other side is James Meredith, safe pair of hands left back. And on the wings, then you've got Shane Ferguson on the left. Now, Ferguson is an absolutely dangerous player. And what they were clever at doing against Wigan was they took out Meredith, dropped Ferguson in. So a bit like Leeds playing with something like 4 wingers against us yesterday. On Tuesday, they had Meredith playing deep, and they brought Aidan O'Brien in at left wing. So you had those two working in tandem with Ferguson bombing on. But Ferguson's crosses are dangerous.
Ferguson was ex Newcastle.
I think so.
Newcastle.
Yeah.
Have you time for the story? The Joe Kinnear story.
Go
Briefly. 30 seconds, because I know we're on the clock with all of this. When he was attending, he went to a League Cup game. Joe Kinnear. I stood this up. I've got the source on it. Birmingham beat Swansea in the League Cup in 2013. Joe Kinnear went, and he was really impressed with the performance of midfielder Shane Ferguson. Ferguson was on loan for Birmingham. At Birmingham from Newcastle. Yeah. So, but Kinnear then, he said, a City source told whichever newspaper it was, Ferguson had a great game that night, and Joe Kinnear told one of the officials he was interested in signing him. At first, the guy thought he was joking, then he realised that Kinnear didn't know that Ferguson was actually a Newcastle player. He was trying to sign his own player, basically.
Brilliant.
It was from the era.
Love it.
It was Derek Lambisi, Johan Kebab, Hatem Ben Arfa, get it right, and Sami Amamobi. Sammy
Amiobi OBE.
He said, tweeted, "Wow, at least get my name right." So that's the Shane Ferguson story. He was ex-Newcastle, really good left winger. The other side, they've got Jed Wallace, who has struggled, classic winger, struggled for form, inconsistent, but he had a really good game against Wigan on the right.
He had a really good game against us at Portman Road last year. He was really good. Yeah, I like him. Yeah.
So this is, as I say, they're getting the balance. Now, up front, O'Brien I'll come back to, because O'Brien does their nut in, because he is... To get him on the field, Harris plays him as a left winger. He's actually a striker. He's a brilliant finisher. He's a useless winger. But he's one of those players that you get him near the goal and he can score. I think he scored against us in the 4-3 last year. He's one of those players. If he gets into the right area, he can find the net. So I think Harris sees him for that. But as a winger, he's useless. From what they were saying.
You've been reading the Millwall forum too much, Harry. You can't be. He's useless. He is.
Rubbish.
What? I have been bowdlerising. I've taken the language out.
Singing that Millwall song in a minute.
Quickly up front, Lee Gregory's the main striker. He's partnered with Tom Elliott. He's the one to watch out for. Gregory. He's not a finisher, but just some quick comments on him, which are worth knowing. Incredible upper body strength, protects the ball, brings others into the attack. But for all his running and work rate, he doesn't score enough goals. Elliott, there's a small point with Tom Elliott. What's with him? He's been hitting the woodwork with headers a mad number of times. It's one of those things they'll talk about in 5-10 years' time. He seems to He's not great with his feet, but he is very good with his head. Him and the centre back Cooper will be the two big set piece threats. They're the two who come up, or that's the big threat. Steve Morrison, the veteran, 35, ex-Budgie. Ex-Leeds. He comes on with 15 minutes to go. He scored the winner. He was unmarked in the 6-yard box against Wigan, and he got the late winner for them. But he came on late in the win against Villa, and he drove them mad. He bullied them, and they were really frustrated with him because he was holding the ball up. He's good in the air as well, but he's a
battering ram, isn't he?
Yeah,
but he's their John Walters in a way, but he hasn't got injured. He's that player who helps them out. And the other player who hasn't come in, who I think will feature if they lose Gregory, there's a bit of succession planning here, is Tom Bradshaw. He's very similar the way they describe him to Gregory, but he's a lesser Gregory, if that makes sense.
We were linked with him at Barnsley, weren't we?
Yeah. And at the moment he tends to be a bench option. Who else? Other minor player that you might see. Where are they now? There's always one. Yuri Skalak. He was a left winger. He's on the bench. He's an understudy to Ferguson. Basically, they've got two left wingers who are brilliant at crossing, and Skalak is the slightly weaker of the two. He played for Brighton in their promotion season. That's how you remember him from.
Who's your right back on Saturday for Ipswich then? I'll put that to both of you.
Against Ferguson.
Was Danassian on the bench last night?
I can't even remember. I'm not sure.
I didn't take a lot of notice. Where did Spence even come from last night?
Yeah.
What the hell? What, you know?
Guinevere and set up ball to number 3. Yeah. Anyway, so that's a good question.
I'd say Danassian for me. But
I'd say Danassian. I love Danassian. He's up and down right back. That's where he's good. And he can defend. We saw that against Tom Lawrence and against Derby. Lawrence only was good from set pieces, but I remember that he had to be. Basically Lawrence was getting frustrated.
And there's no issue with him playing now. Walters is injured. There's no issue with the number of loanees now, is there? He can play, can't he? He can play if they so wish to. They could play Pennington, Chalabar, Nolan. Doesn't matter.
Well, there you go. You've been witness there, Dave, to a preview show that usually takes an hour and a bit, condensed into 50 minutes. So, Harry, thank you for steamrolling through that at a great pace. You're like a horse a horse racing commentator. Impressive.
Bring on the questions.
Let's go for the questions then, we'll talk about Saturday at the end.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Let's try and keep these short and sweet if you can, gents.
Go on. Yes and no.
And I'll try and avoid the ones which. Let's start. There's a few here that are slagging off Ipswich supporters. I don't want to go there. I think there's definitely a message here that we need to get behind whoever the new manager is, don't we, guys?
Yeah.
Whoever.
Yeah.
Underline.
I mean, this is a nice, easy one to start from Nathan. Where do you rate Paul Hurst among the Ipswich Town managers? Is he the worst? Is he better than Roy Keane? Any thoughts there, Dave?
Well, stats would show he's the worst, isn't he? I mean, the lowest 145 days, was it? 1 win. He's down. Like I said, the owner's made 3 poor appointments, and he's unfortunately one of them, isn't he?
Yep. There's quite a few that are speculating about who the new man's going to be. I think we had a quick nose through Twitter and TWTD, and we're fairly certain that Lambert is all but confirmed now, aren't we?
I've just seen something on here that said 48 hours. I think Joe Fair's got on him at 4-1 on just before the betting closed. You joke. Insider dealing. It's all akin to insider dealing, that is, Joe.
Let's not call that out, shall we? Let's not throw one of our own at the bus, Dave. Alex Pryke, what do you call McCarthy now he's no longer the previous manager? We'll have to think about that, the previous manager. And someone asked about what do you call a new era now? It's a new era. I've settled those ones. That's no problem at all. Yucky Brain, my favourite Twitter profile name of all of them. Harry, how do you feel about Lambert being a former Norwich man?
Not a problem whatsoever. That's not a problem with me. Not at all. In fact, if anything, looking at what the Norwich fans have been saying, I had a quick look over there. They're it's winding them up a little bit tonight. The thought of Paul Lambert doing a new manager photo shoot with an Ipswich scarf over his head sickens me. And there's a little bit of high moral ground. Clearly, a man who places no stock in loyalty. This demonstrates a real lack of class. Bless them.
Well, I mean, I think
the new Ian Crook, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think they weren't too enamoured with him because he left them for Villa, didn't he?
I think he tried to sue them as well for lost earnings or something.
Yes, he did.
Anyway, question from Tim, who mentions Chris Sutton, all the careful what you wish for, guys. Let's not dwell on that, shall we? given the new man has the same players to work with for 2 months, can you see them gaining the confidence they evidently lack, or are free agents the only way forward, Dave?
A bit of both, really. You'd think, like I said before, you'd think the new manager bounce. Hopefully, someone coming in, give the players a lift. What the hell is out there? I mean, I've seen everyone from Darren Bent linked. He's been quite well linked, hasn't he? I mean, who is out there? I just don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It's from free agents.
Yeah.
Not much, I don't think. No.
We've got another question from Lee about Lambert's previous employers. So we'll skip through those ones, guys, if that's okay. Our friend Mullet, who was also at Leeds last night, Harry, has ITFC become a manager's graveyard under Evans? Do we commend him for acting against precedent in removing Hurst, or chastise him for letting it go so horribly wrong and toxic behind the scenes? Is ITFC a manager's graveyard, first of all? Is it becoming one?
It goes back to what we were saying earlier about money and the lack of where we stand in the scheme of things. If the manager coming in has to be given a fighting chance. They do need to be backed. Otherwise, it is a manager's graveyard. Yes, because you're playing. There are unequal odds, and then there are unequal odds, and Evans needs to be damn careful on that.
Yep, and on the owner. Do you commend him for acting against precedent, i.e. your history of giving managers time, or chastising for letting it go wrong?
Yeah, something had to give. Yeah.
This was. I mean, the circumstantial evidence was just overwhelming on this one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it banged the rights.
Dave, with the current budget, realistically now, not being romantic, where are we as a club?
In a mess.
Yeah.
We are. Don't sugarcoat it. We are in a mess. And as you say, another 2 months to work for any new manager to come in to work with what he's got. Things have got to pick up quickly, really quickly. Otherwise, and teams around, all right. It's only one time, but teams around us are now starting to win. Preston, all these teams are starting to pick up points now.
Yep.
Yeah, daylight.
Oh, yeah. Well, 4 points now, isn't it? Any new manager coming in has got to hit the ground running big time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Harry Butcher recommended Harry from Bath to be the new manager. I think that's no mention for you and me, Dave. Which
Harry, they never make it out on the pitch. The team talk for 2 hours long. They never get out there.
You're like Bielsa.
One more thing. Rainbow, come here, hang on.
Harry does have a question as well, and he also has a chant for you too, which I'll send to you if you haven't found it. Let's just go back through our post-mortem of Paul Hurst. What moment did it all go wrong? What do we think it's Norwich, or do we, specific moment, one each, where you thought it went wrong?
Walking up to the stadium at Brentford. Yeah. That's when it went. I always like the green light, amber light, red light kind of motif in my head, and I had an amber light on Hurst walking up to Brentford, and when I saw the look of bewilderment on so many Towns fans' faces walking around the stadium outside, I said, no, we're in trouble here. It's gone from a possibility of him getting it wrong to an overwhelming probability.
You know what? Madly, probably the Exeter interview was a real sort of a woof beginning of it, really. You tend to look at it from another angle after that. Where's this come from? Perhaps things were not right even as far back as that.
In the context of us probably knowing who the new man is, I'll ask the question anyway, Dave. Can we trust our owners to appoint the right man? I don't think so. Their track record is awful.
Well, as we've said, he's got 3 out of 4, 3 out of 4 wrong. Let's just hope so. And whoever it is, look, we have to. If it is Paul Lambert, yes, let's hope he comes in. And look, don't kid ourselves. Fans will get behind him. If he starts picking up results, and we start to get results and start to pull away, fans will get behind him. Because they will. They will. They will, irrespective of his Norwich. Even more so if they see it's completely winding up the Norwich fan base as well.
Yeah, the away game at Carrow Road's going to be fun. Stewart's gloves. I'm hoping it's Marcus Stewart's lovely woolen gloves from back in the noughties. Hope you don't mind me slightly changing the question. Benching Barr and Knudsen. Do you feel that Hurst maybe undermined the senior players a little bit, Harry?
I think he didn't know how to handle them. I really think that was a big thing. I think he was very comfortable with lower league players who needed progressing, who needed developing, and who had a more limited skill set, which needed evolving, which a more experienced manager at championship level can do anyway. But I think he didn't know how to handle the players with greater status. I said it earlier, players with a greater track record or greater sense of achievement who have higher expectations from their manager. My sense is that there was a huge disconnect there, and I don't know whether it goes back. Marcus Stewart years ago to a Southwest group talked about trust. He talked about trust, and to me, somewhere caused a fracture of trust between the management and the senior players. That's my sixpence worth on it.
Two World Cup
you're
players,
right. I
Dave.
just think, as I said before, I think they were very, very comfortable under the previous manager. He was say what you like about the previous manager. He was a good man manager. And irrespective of what he did with, where he played Freddie Sears and one thing, and little bits and pieces like that. He was a very, very good man manager. Don't underestimate that. And he was manager of Ireland. He'd taken Ireland to the World Cup. He played in the World Cup. He's going to get respect just because of who he is. And Keane, not to a degree, Keane immediately had the respect. All right, he lost it eventually, but Keane immediately had the respect just because of who he is.
Question from Richard at Broadreach 53. Quickly, do we have the players to get out of this mess, Dave? We talked about signings, but in the squad today?
Really, as the squad is now, I've got to say no. Honestly.
That's short and sweet.
Totally agree with that.
I mean, we've been all through it. As it stands.
This
hell of a job on his hands. Hell of a job.
As things, it's a relegation squad at the moment. No question.
No question about it.
No question.
Yeah.
Question from William for you, Harry. A few short and long-term priorities for the new man. Short-term probably is nice and easy. Win.
I think it's just try and not be too far behind by the time we get to Christmas. By the time we get to the January window, stay in as close a touch as you can, just to get there. And then once you get there, then he can take stock of the situation. That would be the main thing. Am I allowed? I know we can't say Lambert, but given the rumours going around, I had a quick look on the Stoke forum, which was interesting, and I've got some small words of consolation. I found one post which was interesting. I have a very close friend, Paul, who's a big Stoke fan, and he said no manager could have managed that grouuf of players, and we saw what's happened in the early part of the season. But they said about Lambert, he wouldn't have wasted. This is talking about Stoke. He wouldn't have wasted pre-season trying to integrate all our deadwood. He knew exactly who was no good. He would have narrowed down earlier his targets, but it was clear there and based on the weaknesses that he'd seen. So in other words, he's got very good player judgment. The problem he had there was, and this comes back to Marcus, he didn't have the backing of the board at Stoke to do what he would have wanted to do to completely re-engineer that squad.
Surely any new manager coming in this. With this squad he's inheriting, has surely been told by the owner, okay, look, it is what it is now. You've got to work with what you've got now. But look, there will be some funds, and surely considerable, reasonable funds to do some business in January. Surely someone's got to come in with that remit. Otherwise, why would you come?
Yeah. And on that, Dave, Jack asks, is it just to save us from relegation? I.e., is he going to be off as soon as we're down, or does it fit some kind of the 5-point Marcus Evans plan? Any thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, initially, he's got the manager. Any manager's coming in has got to keep us up. Don't get me. Honestly, any manager coming in now. What did McCarthy? McCarthy got that extra year, extra 2 years after. I'm pretty sure that was it after the playoff or even before the playoff season. I can't recall. Look, any manager coming in now who keeps us up is going to surely get rewarded with a contract extension. I'd have certainly thought.
Statue outside
Good Lord.
Road.
Sorry?
That's maybe a statue outside.
Honestly, almost. It's that big a job, I think.
We'll do a couple more of these. A lot of them are of a similar theme, so again, apologies for not reading all of these out. Harry, Ben asks, are the players partly to blame?
I think the burden of this lies with Hurst, the management team. I think it really does. I think I in my angry moments, I feel he's taken a baseball bat to that squad. What he inherited, he didn't put together. He didn't give them the balance to be able to fight effectively. I'm struggling to put this on the players. I really am. I think they need support rather than an overhaul. I think they initially just get, and I'm not just saying, they're professional footballers playing at a high level. They're not kids. They know what they're letting themselves in for, and they, playing out there with 40 or what was it, 29,000 Leeds fans baying at you last night. That takes strong character. But I do think, for me, it's not about reform. It's about support at the moment for them. To me, it's more on the management.
Yeah.
Listen, you perhaps know this, and I don't. Of our loan players we've got on loan, the kids we've got on loan, like the likes of Nyden, maybe not Manuel Morris, players like that. Do we know of many of those are on recall?
I don't think they are. I think Morris is definitely not. I think we looked at his when Walters.
Is that what we need, Dave? Do we?
I'm just saying. A new guy coming in. Is he going to take a look? I totally agree with you because now is not the time to pitch these players in. No, it's not the time to pitch these young players in at all. But I just thought from a new manager coming in wanting to take a general over squad. I don't know the answer to that, but no, I agree with you, Harry. No, now's not the time to you can't pitch them in. Can't pitch them in. I mean, I thought Dazelle Saturday, you could still see, okay, he wanted the ball, he looked for the ball, but against QPR, he looked lost, didn't he? Absolutely lost. Didn't he?
Let's do. I've said a couple more. One more each. Question for Dave. Andy Grimes asks: the Hurst era was supposed to excite and unite the fans. We've been left bottom of the league with more discontent and division than ever. I think this is. How does the new manager fix this? I think it's the division.
It wasn't an appointment; it was sabotage. I'm convinced. Go on.
It's the division in the supporters, because we obviously had quite a divided supporter base when the previous manager parted company.
It's really odd.
Are we more divided now?
I think the division is perhaps. I don't know. I think certainly the Hurst appointment got a lot more fans back. We know of one. Good old Stat. He immediately came back. So I think certainly the Hurst appointment got more fans back. But I think all the goodwill he built up in the first few weeks, they say he lost fairly quickly. It's a really weird. When you look at it from the outside, Harry's right. It's almost laughable, really. It's just so Ipswich, isn't it? If ever a club can find a way to shoot collectively themselves in the foot,
peak Ipswich, isn't it?
And it's over and over and over again. It happens. Why? Why is it always our club?
Dave,
You'll make it up.
It's like one of those parties you have, and it gets out on Facebook, it gets out on social media, and people come around and they trash the house, and you come out of it and you think, oh God, it wasn't even any fun.
No, honestly. Oh, dear.
So our last question, and we'll do a bit of a sum up and talk about Saturday, because we still have a game on Saturday, guys. From Dim Jen, I'm going to say your name is. Apologies if I've butchered that. Was the formation against Leeds an improvement? And do you think we have a greater chance of winning with it? And I guess I'll lead that into a question: does he use it on Saturday, Brian Klug?
Just quickly, yes. I thought the performance was just as abject as it was against QPR, but certainly the formation was better. It was a better balance. You got to say that it was a much better balance to the team.
Yeah.
So I concede that. Harry, if you've got anything to add to that?
No, totally agree.
Agree. I mean, what? Who didn't play? Are we going to likely see the likes of Dazelle against Millwall? Doubtful starting. I'd like to see Chalabar in there. I really would. I think Chalabar's got a bit to offer.
Leeds fans had a really good chance for Chalabar.
His hair. Was it? I heard that he was getting some grief over his hair, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was.
So look, I think Klug's in charge. Look, get that game out of the way, and then another two massive games, isn't it? Preston at home, big game. Reading away, my first away game this season. And
you're committed now.
Yeah,
we got the tickets.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll go with the same similar sort of balanced lineup. But again, last night we haven't perhaps touched on this. 7 changes. 7. Yeah. All right, it perhaps warranted it, but 7. Christ almighty.
It's a question I'd love to ask Stat. I haven't had a chance to do the maths on it myself. What's the highest number of average changes? If you were to total up all of his games, whatever, 15 games times X number of, between the 14 differences, what was the average number of changes per match? It must be a record. It simply
Paul
must
Jewell
be.
was good
Well,
at
we
that,
certainly,
wasn't
I think we've certainly used
All
the
right.
most players, haven't we? What was
Yeah.
that, Rich?
I said Paul Jewell was very good at that.
Oh, he used to shuffle the pack, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he did.
Regularly.
Well, there you go, Stat.
Every
There's some
other
homework for you
Saturday.
to do for the weekend.
So just,
Harry, any thoughts on Saturday? Is it a game where we could just write it off, or do we actually need to turn up?
I don't know. It depends. If any potential new manager wants to have a word with Klug about what ideas to put in place, it's a free hit in that sense. I can't see us winning it. I can, a 2-1 defeat. I can see. I think Millwall might give us something back, but I think they've put their tails up, and I can see them. I can't see them. I can't see them losing. They seem to be coming into focus. They're probably, the optimist in me says that if we were where they are in a month's time, I would be emotional. But I think if we are where they are by Christmas, I think I would be happy. Put it that way.
Okay.
That's the amount of catching up we have
Harry,
to do.
you were right what you said earlier. We just need, whatever happens with the new manager, we just need to keep in touch come the January.
Yeah.
Come January the 1st.
Yeah.
Not be, dare I say it, 6, 7, 8 points adrift. We need to be
Yeah.
there. Right there. Saturday. It was odd under Klug last year because we'd lose 4-0, then we'd win 4-0.
Yeah.
So hey,
Well, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see Paul Lambert do a Steve McLaren and waltz downstairs at half time and change things
banging
4-4 or
second
something.
half goals. Yeah,
You
exactly.
never
Famous.
know.
Forgot about that. Forgot about that. I mean, chances are that will be the likely scenario, won't it? 'Cause we understand Klug's going to be in charge, and from what I'm reading since we've been on air, WhatsApp and one thing and another, that it looks like he's going to be appointed within the next day or so. So
There you go.
Yeah.
We
but
shall see.
We shall see. Crikey.
Gentlemen, we've got through a load of work there. So thank you for your time. And again, thank you for everybody for your questions. Let's do a few plugs. I'll quickly mention the channel. You can find us at Blue Monday ITFC on Twitter. 16th of February, come and see us all chat about wherever we might find ourselves against Paul Lambert's former club Stoke as well. So there's a nice bit of parallel for you there. You can find me at Ipswich on Twitter. Harry, do you want to tell us where we can find your blogs and your Twitter?
You can find me at Harry from Bath on Twitter, and I'll link the full Millwall preview notes up. They'll go up on TWT late morning, lunchtime tomorrow, and I'll link them there, so you get all the detailed breakdown of formations, etc., etc.
Brilliant. And Dave, where can we find you?
Reach me on at David Dymond 3. Apologies, there was no history show this week. Stat was busy working half term, but he was working. He assures me he was working, so that will be back next week. And I've got a week off Sunday, so I'm not sure who's on with Ben on Sunday. You on, Rich? I can't.
Well, we'll do a Paul Hurst and we'll chuck it up in there and see who's on there on Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't
Harry,
think I'm not there.
Harry, whenever I'm on with you, I've got a book of the week, mate. I picked another one. Here's my book of the week. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing that?
What was football like
Oh
in the
God,
1970s?
I've seen a Grandad like the 70s. I haven't read that, but now you've got me interested. Making a note. Thank you.
It's a Sheffield. It's written by probably about my age. Old Sheffield Wednesday fan. Very good book. Recommend that one. Book of the week. Me and Harry got a little book club going on.
Nice.
And I still see you haven't sold the Miracle of the Italian, the Miracle of San Castello, whatever it's called.
No, this is my home.
I thought you were in your shop. I thought your collection.
Oh no!
Goodness.
Times are not that tough yet.
This is my man cave.
I was going to say, every time I see Harry, I'm looking at him and think, Christ, he's not shifting much stock, is he?
No. Shop, I'm glad to say. Oh no, these are, and I wouldn't sell that book anyway if anybody wanted it. I have another one down on the book.
Well, guys, thank you for that. Another book mentioned that Kevin Beattie book. Oh, go on, Harry. Go on.
Yes. No, it's just go ahead. Go ahead. Mention the Kevin Beattie.
I was going to say you can that Kevin Beattie book. There you go. Thank you, Dave. They've the author has reprinted it. It's available through Amazon on TWTD. Fantastic. So I've just got my copy of that. So looking forward to that. Go on, Harry.
Fantastic.
Yeah. It's a lovely read. No, just what you were saying about Kevin Beattie, just briefly to wrap up from my end. Anyway, the Kevin Beattie's funeral is whenever you're listening to this, hopefully if it's before Friday afternoon, it's passing the ground at 2:30. I did want to say, in the middle of all the ferment and froth and excitement going on this week, huge thing. in my bookshop tomorrow, and just give my thoughts to Kevin, his family, and everybody at the club. I'll be at Portman Road in spirit tomorrow afternoon, and anybody, wherever you are around the UK, wherever you're listening to this, or around the world, wherever, up and pause 2:30 UK time tomorrow, and his cortege will be passing the ground. And if you're religious, do say a little prayer, but just keep them very much in your thoughts. Then it'll mean a lot to them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Well said.
Harry.
Well said, Harry. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Echo those sentiments. Brilliant.
Yeah. But
right. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll end on, a bittersweet moment. Thank you again for your time, gents, and hopefully everyone enjoyed that.
See ya.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.